A charming millionaire benefactor offers to sponsor the art of a young artist struggling financially in exchange for her posing as his daughter at high society events until she uncovers the truth behind his generosity. Her latest piece, a vibrant abstract of swirling colors, was nearly complete, but the lack of financial stability loomed over her like a dark cloud. Bills piled up on her small desk, and her savings had dwindled to almost nothing. She knew that without a breakthrough soon, she would have to give up her dream of being a full-time artist. Emily glanced around at her small, cluttered apartment, feeling the peeling wallpaper and the flickering overhead light seemed to mock her aspirations. Despite her struggles, Emily's passion for her art remained unwavering. She believed that each stroke of her brush brought her closer to something extraordinary. She often lost herself in the process, the hours slipping away unnoticed as she worked. But passion alone wasn't enough to pay the rent or buy supplies. Her phone buzzed, jolting her from her thoughts. It was a message from her best friend, Sarah, inviting her to a gallery opening that evening. Emily hesitated. She enjoyed these events, but lately they had become painful reminders of her own stalled career. Still, she decided to go, hoping to network and perhaps find an opportunity. As she got ready, Emily couldn't shake off the feeling of hopelessness. She dressed in her best outfit, a simple black dress that had seen better days, and applied a touch of makeup to hide the weariness in her eyes. She took a deep breath, trying to muster some optimism, and headed out into the bustling streets of New York City. The gallery was buzzing with excitement when Emily arrived. She greeted Sarah with a forced smile, trying to blend in with the crowd of affluent art enthusiasts. The vibrant paintings and sculptures on display were both inspiring and intimidating. As she made her way through the room, she couldn't help but feel out of place among the well-dressed patrons. Emily was admiring a striking piece when a distinguished man approached her. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said, his voice smooth and confident. She turned to see Thomas Clark, a well-known philanthropist and businessman who often sponsored young artists. "Yes, it is," Emily replied, trying to hide her surprise. Clark's presence was imposing, and she wondered why he was talking to her. "I've seen your work before," Clark continued, "and I must say it's quite impressive." Emily's heart skipped a beat. "Thank you," she said, barely able to contain her excitement. "It means a lot coming from you." Clark smiled warmly. "I'd like to discuss a proposition with you, Emily. Can you meet me at my office tomorrow?" Emily nodded, her mind racing. This could be the break she had been waiting for. "Of course, I'll be there." As she left the gallery that night, Emily felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe things were finally about to change for the better. The next morning, Emily stood outside Clark's opulent office building, her nerves threatening to get the best of her. She took a deep breath and walked inside, marveling at the grandeur of the place. The receptionist greeted her with a polite smile and directed her to Clark's office on the top floor. As the elevator doors opened, Emily was met with an impressive view of the city skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. Clark's office was tastefully decorated, with modern art pieces adorning the walls and sleek furniture that spoke of understated luxury. Clark himself was seated behind a large mahogany desk, looking every bit the powerful businessman. "Emily, welcome," he said, standing to shake her hand. "Please have a seat." Emily sat down, trying to calm her racing heart. "Thank you for inviting me, Mr. Clark." "Call me Thomas," he replied with a smile. "I've been following your work for some time now, and I believe you have tremendous potential. That's why I'd like to offer you my sponsorship. I will fund your art, provide you with the best materials, and ensure your work gets the exposure it deserves." Emily's eyes widened in disbelief. This was more than she could have ever dreamed of. "That's incredibly generous of you. But why me?" Clark leaned back in his chair, studying her. "I see something in your work that speaks to me. It's raw, passionate, and real. But there is one condition. Emily's heart sank slightly. What is it? I need you to pose as my daughter at high society events. It's purely for appearances. My actual daughter is estranged, and having you by my side will help maintain a certain image. Emily was taken aback. Pose as your daughter? Yes, Clark said smoothly. You'll attend events, galas, and social gatherings with me. In return, I'll ensure your art reaches the audience it deserves. Think of it as a mutually beneficial arrangement. Emily hesitated. The proposition was unusual, to say the least, but the opportunity was too good to pass up. She thought of her mounting bills, her struggling career, and the chance to finally achieve her dreams. All right, she said finally. I'll do it. Clark's smile widened. Excellent. We'll start with an event this Saturday. My assistant will help you with everything you need. As Emily left Clark's office, her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. She had just agreed to something unconventional, but the prospect of finally succeeding in her art career was too enticing. She decided to focus on the positives and prepare herself for the new role she was about to take on. The week passed in a blur of preparations. Clark's assistant, a meticulously organized woman named Lisa, helped Emily transform. They shopped for dresses, shoes, and accessories, ensuring she looked the part of a sophisticated socialite. Emily found herself in upscale boutiques she had never dreamed of entering, trying on outfits that made her feel like a different person. Saturday arrived, and Emily stood in front of her apartment's small mirror, adjusting the strap of her elegant, floor-length gown. The dress was a deep emerald green, bringing out the color of her eyes. Her hair was styled in soft waves, and she wore delicate diamond earrings that sparkled in the light. She barely recognized herself. A limousine arrived to pick her up, and as she slid into the plush leather seats, her nerves began to build. This was it, the moment her life could change forever. She reminded herself that this was all for her art, for the chance to finally be seen and appreciated. The gala was held at a grand ballroom in one of New York's most prestigious hotels. As Emily stepped out of the limo, the flash of cameras momentarily blinded her. Clark appeared at her side, offering his arm with a reassuring smile. "You look stunning, Emily." "Thank you," she replied, trying to steady her breath. "I hope I don't embarrass you." "You'll be fine," Clark said smoothly. "Just smile and be yourself. Remember, you belong here." Inside, the ballroom was a vision of opulence. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting a warm glow over the elegantly dressed guests. Waiters in crisp uniforms glided through the crowd, offering glasses of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. The air was filled with the hum of conversation and the soft strains of classical music. Emily felt a mix of awe and intimidation as she walked beside Clark, who introduced her to several key figures in the art world. She quickly realized that her role was to be charming and engaging, helping Clark maintain his image as a cultured and connected philanthropist. As the evening progressed, Emily found herself enjoying the attention and the conversations. She spoke passionately about her art, which seemed to impress many of Clark's associates. For the first time, she felt like she was part of this exclusive world, and it was exhilarating. However, there was an undercurrent of unease. Clark's charm was undeniable, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to his motives than he let on. She caught glimpses of his interactions with others, noticing subtle exchanges that hinted at deeper, possibly darker dealings. When the gala finally ended, Emily felt both exhausted and exhilarated. As they drove back, Clark turned to her with a satisfied smile. "You did wonderfully tonight, Emily. I'm very pleased." "Thank you," she replied, unable to hide her relief. "It was an incredible experience." "Get some rest," Clark said. "We have many more events like this ahead of us." As Emily entered her apartment, she felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this unconventional arrangement could lead to something great. She just had to navigate the complexities and keep her wits about her. The days following the gala were a whirlwind of activity. Emily's phone buzzed constantly with messages from Lisa about upcoming events, fittings for new dresses, and meetings with potential patrons. Her art was finally gaining attention, and she should have been elated, but an unease gnawed at her. Late one night, Emily sat in her studio, trying to focus on her painting. The vivid colors on the canvas seemed to mock her as doubts swirled in her mind. She replayed the conversations she had overheard at the gala, snippets of Clark's interactions that suggested his dealings were not as philanthropic as they appeared. Her phone buzzed, breaking her thoughts. It was a message from Sarah asking to meet for coffee the next morning. Emily agreed, eager to talk to someone who knew her outside of this new, confusing world. The next day, Emily met Sarah at a cozy cafe in Brooklyn. The familiar setting and the smell of freshly brewed coffee provided a sense of comfort. As they sipped their drinks, Emily recounted her experience at the gala and her growing concerns about Clark. "He's helping you a lot, Em," Sarah said cautiously, "but you need to be careful. It sounds like there's more to him than meets the eye." "I know," Emily replied, staring into her coffee. "I just don't know what to do. This opportunity is everything I've ever wanted, but I can't ignore the warning signs." Sarah reached across the table, squeezing Emily's hand. "Follow your instincts. Don't let the glamour blind you to the truth. If something feels off, it probably is." Emily nodded, grateful for Sarah's support. "Thanks, Sarah. I needed to hear that." Returning to her apartment, Emily resolved to pay closer attention to Clark's actions. She couldn't let her ambition overshadow her instincts. She decided to take subtle steps to learn more about Clark's true motives, even if it meant risking the opportunity he had given her. As she prepared for the next event, Emily felt a renewed sense of determination. She would play her role, but she would also protect herself. She had to balance the allure of success with the need for caution. At the following event, a charity auction, Emily carefully observed Clark's interactions. He was charming and persuasive, easily winning over the crowd. But Emily noticed the way he exchanged glances with certain individuals, the way his smile didn't reach his eyes when he thought no one was looking. She engaged in conversations, subtly steering them to gather information. It became clear that Clark's reach extended far beyond the art world. He had connections in finance, politics, and more, an intricate web that suggested his influence was both vast and shadowy. Emily's unease grew, but so did her resolve. She needed to find out more about Clark's dealings, not just for her own safety, but for the sake of her integrity. She couldn't afford to be a pawn in a game she didn't fully understand. As she left the auction that night, Emily knew she was walking a fine line. She had to be careful, but she also had to uncover the truth. Her future depended on it. The charity auction had been a success, and Emily's presence continued to bolster Clark's image. Despite her growing suspicions, she played her part well, charming the attendees and helping to raise significant funds. The next day, Clark invited her to his office to discuss a new opportunity. "Emily, I've been very impressed with your performance," Clark began, pouring them both a glass of wine. "You've brought a fresh energy to our events, and people are noticing." "Thank you," Emily replied, taking a sip of the wine. She had learned to mask her apprehension behind a composed exterior. "There's a significant deal on the horizon," Clark continued. "A major investor is interested in our art initiatives, and I want you to be there when we meet him. Your presence could make all the difference." Emily's heart raced. This was another step deeper into Clark's world, but she needed to maintain her cover to uncover more of his secrets. "Of course, I'd be happy to help." "Excellent," Clark said, a satisfied smile on his face. "The meeting is tomorrow evening. Dress elegantly as always. This investor is very particular about appearances." The next evening, Emily arrived at a high-end restaurant, dressed in a sleek black dress that Lisa had selected. She met Clark at the entrance, and together they were shown to a private dining room. The investor, a distinguished man named Mr. Porter, greeted them warmly. Throughout the dinner, Clark and Porter discussed various art projects and potential investments. Emily played her role perfectly, engaging in the conversation and highlighting the artistic aspects of their endeavors. But as the evening progressed, she noticed something odd. Clark and Porter exchanged several cryptic remarks that seemed unrelated to the art projects. At one point, Porter mentioned a shipment that was arriving soon, and Clark responded with a knowing nod. Emily's suspicions deepened. This was more than just an art investment meeting. After the dinner, Clark praised Emily for her contributions. "You did wonderfully tonight, Emily. Porter is very interested in our projects." "I'm glad to hear that," Emily replied, though her mind was racing with questions about the true nature of their dealings. As they left the restaurant, Clark's demeanor shifted slightly. "Emily, I want you to understand something. Trust is crucial in our line of work. I trust you, and I hope you trust me." Emily nodded, forcing a smile. "Of course, Thomas. I appreciate everything you've done for me." "Good," Clark said, his gaze lingering on her for a moment longer than usual. "We'll be in touch about the next event." As Emily headed home, she couldn't shake the feeling that Clark's trust was a double-edged sword. She needed to find out more about his true activities, but she had to be careful. One wrong move could jeopardize everything. The following week, Emily found herself more entrenched in Clark's world than ever. She attended meetings, galas, and private dinners, each event bringing her closer to the heart of his operations. Despite the glamour, her unease grew with each passing day. One evening, after a particularly lavish party at Clark's penthouse, Emily excused herself to get some air. She wandered down a hallway, away from the noise and revelry, and found a small balcony overlooking the city. As she stood there, the door to Clark's study opened, and she heard voices. Curiosity got the better of her. She moved closer, careful to stay out of sight, and listened. "This shipment is critical," Clark's voice said. "If everything goes as planned, we'll have enough leverage to secure our position for years." A second voice, deep and gravelly, responded, "And what about the girl? She's getting too close." Emily's heart skipped a beat. They were talking about her. "Emily's useful," Clark replied. "She's a valuable asset, but if she becomes a liability, we'll handle it." "Handle it how?" the other man asked. Clark's reply was chilling. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that." Emily's mind raced. She needed to get out of there before they discovered her. She slipped back into the party, her heart pounding. The implications of what she had heard were clear. Clark was involved in something far more dangerous than she had imagined, and her life could be at risk. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Emily maintained her composure, but her mind was spinning with plans. She had to gather more evidence and find a way to expose Clark's activities without endangering herself. It was a delicate balance, and one wrong move could be catastrophic. As the party wound down, Clark approached her, his eyes searching hers. "Are you all right, Emily? You seem distracted." "I'm fine," she replied, forcing a smile. "Just a bit tired. It's been a long evening." Clark nodded. "Get some rest. We have a big week ahead." Emily left the penthouse with a sense of urgency. She needed to act quickly, but she couldn't do it alone. She decided to reach out to Sarah and share what she had learned. It was a risk, but she trusted Sarah's judgment and knew she needed an ally. That night, as she lay in bed, Emily's mind raced with thoughts of the conversation she had overheard. Clark's warning echoed in her ears. She was useful for now, but if she became a liability, he wouldn't hesitate to eliminate her. She had to be smart, cautious, and above all, determined to uncover the truth. The next morning, Emily felt a mix of fear and determination as she headed to meet Sarah. They had agreed to meet at their favorite coffee shop, a small, cozy place tucked away from the bustling streets. As Emily walked in, she spotted Sarah at their usual table, already sipping on a latte. "Hey, Em," Sarah greeted her with a warm smile, but her expression quickly turned to concern when she saw the look on Emily's face. "What's wrong?" Emily sat down, taking a deep breath. "Sarah, I need to talk to you about something serious." Sarah leaned in, her eyes filled with worry. "What is it?" "You're scaring me." Emily quickly recounted everything she had discovered about Clark, from the cryptic conversations to the eavesdropped meeting about the shipment. She watched as Sarah's expression shifted from confusion to shock, and then to determination. "This is bad, Emily," Sarah said, her voice low. "Really bad. You need to get out of this situation." "I know," Emily replied, her voice trembling, "but I can't just walk away. He has connections everywhere. If I disappear, he might come after me. I need to gather enough evidence to expose him." Sarah nodded, her mind clearly working through the problem. "We need to be smart about this. Do you have any idea where to start?" "I was thinking about reaching out to Detective Miles," Emily said. "He's been investigating art thefts and might have more information on Clark." Sarah considered this. "All right, but be careful. You can't trust anyone fully. Keep your distance and don't let Clark suspect anything." "I will," Emily promised. "Thank you for believing me, Sarah. I don't know what I'd do without you." "Hey, we're in this together," Sarah said, squeezing Emily's hand. "We'll figure it out. Just stay safe, okay?" As they parted ways, Emily felt a renewed sense of determination. She had a plan now, and someone she could trust. She decided to contact Detective Miles that evening and see if he could help her gather the evidence she needed. That night, Emily sat in her apartment, staring at her phone. Finally, she took a deep breath and dialed Detective Miles's number. It rang twice before he answered. "Detective Miles speaking." "Detective, this is Emily Dawson. We met at one of Clark's events. I need to talk to you about something important." There was a pause on the other end. "All right, Miss Dawson, what's this about?" "It's about Thomas Clark. I think he's involved in something illegal, and I have information that could help your investigation." "Meet me at the precinct tomorrow morning," Miles said. "We'll discuss it in person." Emily agreed, ending the call with a sense of resolve. The wheels were now in motion, and there was no turning back. The next morning, Emily arrived at the precinct with a sense of trepidation. She had never been involved in anything like this before, and the stakes were incredibly high. As she entered the building, she was directed to Detective Miles' office, a small room cluttered with case files and evidence boards. "Miss Dawson," Miles greeted her as she stepped inside. "Have a seat. Tell me everything you know." Emily recounted her experiences with Clark, from the initial offer to the suspicious conversations and the eavesdrop meeting about the shipment. Miles listened intently, taking notes and occasionally asking clarifying questions. "This confirms some of my suspicions," Miles said after she finished. "We've been tracking Clark for a while, but we've had trouble getting solid evidence. Your information could be the breakthrough we need." "What do we do now?" Emily asked, her anxiety evident. "We need more concrete evidence," Miles replied. "I need you to continue acting as you have been. Keep your eyes and ears open and try to get any documents or recordings that can link Clark to illegal activities." Emily nodded, though the thought of continuing to be part of Clark's world made her stomach churn. "I'll do my best." "Be careful, Emily," Miles warned. "Clark is dangerous, and if he suspects anything, he won't hesitate to protect himself. I'll have an undercover officer keeping an eye on you at events, but you need to stay vigilant." "Understood," Emily said. "Thank you, Detective." As she left the precinct, Emily felt the weight of her decision. She was now a key player in a dangerous game, and any misstep could be fatal, but she was determined to see it through. Clark had to be stopped, not just for her sake, but for everyone he had wronged. The next few days were a blur of events and secretive meetings. Emily attended several high-profile gatherings with Clark, always on the lookout for anything that could serve as evidence. She discreetly recorded conversations, took photos of suspicious documents, and made mental notes of any significant interactions. At one such event, Emily noticed Clark speaking with a man who seemed particularly agitated. She managed to position herself nearby and catch snippets of their conversation. "The shipment's delayed," the man said angrily. "This could ruin everything." Clark's expression darkened. "I don't care how you do it. Just fix it. We can't afford any mistakes." Emily's heart raced. This could be the evidence she needed. She discreetly recorded the conversation and made a mental note to share it with Miles. As the evening wore on, Emily's anxiety grew. She was playing a dangerous game, and the pressure was immense. She needed to maintain her composure and not arouse Clark's suspicion. The next morning, she met with Miles again, sharing the recordings and her observations. He listened carefully, nodding in approval. "This is good, Emily," he said. "We're getting closer. Keep doing what you're doing, but remember to stay safe." "I will," Emily promised. "I just want this to be over." "It will be," Miles assured her. "We'll bring Clark down. Just hang in there a little longer." As Emily left the precinct, she felt a mix of fear and hope. The endgame was approaching, and she had to stay strong. She was closer than ever to exposing Clark's true nature, and she couldn't afford to falter now. The second gala was held in a grand hall adorned with opulent decorations. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting a golden glow over the elegantly dressed guests. Emily arrived early, her nerves heightened by the gravity of her mission. She wore a stunning sapphire blue gown, her hair styled in soft curls, looking every bit the part of Clark's sophisticated daughter. As she mingled with the guests, Emily kept an eye on Clark, who was charming the attendees with his usual ease. She noticed he spent a significant amount of time with a group of men she hadn't seen before, their discussions seeming more intense than usual. She edged closer, trying to catch snippets of their conversation. "Need to ensure the transfer goes smoothly," one man said, his voice low and urgent. Clark nodded. "We've accounted for all contingencies. The shipment will arrive on schedule." Emily discreetly activated the recording app on her phone, capturing the exchange. She had learned to be subtle, blending in while keeping her senses sharp. As the evening progressed, she managed to gather more fragments of conversations that hinted at the illicit activities Clark was orchestrating. During a brief lull, Emily found herself alone on a balcony overlooking the city. The cool night air was a welcome respite from the intense atmosphere inside. She was deep in thought when she felt a presence behind her. "Enjoying the view," Clark's voice startled her. Emily turned, forcing a smile. "Yes, it's beautiful out here." Clark stepped closer, his eyes scrutinizing her. "You've been very quiet tonight, Emily. Is something on your mind?" Emily's heart pounded. She couldn't let him suspect anything. "Just tired, I suppose. These events can be overwhelming." Clark studied her for a moment longer before nodding. "I understand. But remember, you're here to make an impression. We can't afford any missteps." "I won't let you down," Emily assured him, hoping her voice didn't betray her anxiety. "Good," Clark said, his tone softening. "You've been a tremendous asset so far. Keep it up." As Clark walked away, Emily felt a chill run down her spine. His words, though encouraging, held an undercurrent of threat. She had to remain vigilant and not let her guard down. The rest of the evening passed without incident, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She knew she was walking a fine line, and any mistake could be disastrous. As she left the gala, she made a mental note of everything she had recorded, planning to share it with Miles the next day. Back in her apartment, Emily reviewed the recordings, noting the incriminating details. She felt a mix of satisfaction and dread. The evidence was piling up, but so were the risks. She was in deep, and there was no turning back now. The following morning, Emily met Detective Miles at a quiet cafe, away from prying eyes. She handed him the recordings, her hands trembling slightly. Miles listened to them carefully, his expression growing more serious with each passing minute. "This is solid evidence, Emily," he said finally. "We're getting closer to bringing Clark down. But we need more, something that directly ties him to the illegal shipments." "I'll do whatever it takes," Emily replied, her resolve firm. "I want this to end." Miles nodded, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We're almost there. Just hang in a little longer." As Emily left the cafe, her phone buzzed with a message from Clark. He wanted her to accompany him to a private dinner that evening with some of his key associates. Emily's heart sank. The stakes were higher than ever, and she knew this dinner could be critical in gathering the final piece of evidence. That evening, Emily dressed in a sleek black gown and met Clark at an exclusive restaurant. The atmosphere was tense, and Clark's associates eyed her with suspicion. As the dinner progressed, the conversation turned to the upcoming shipment. "We can't afford any delays," one of the men said, his tone harsh. "Everything needs to go perfectly." Clark nodded. "I've taken care of all the details. The shipment will arrive on time, and our partners will be satisfied." Emily discreetly recorded the conversation, her heart pounding. She knew this was the evidence Miles needed, but as the dinner continued, Clark's demeanor changed. He seemed more watchful, his eyes frequently darting towards Emily. After dinner, Clark asked Emily to join him in a private room. Her pulse quickened as she followed him, unsure of what to expect. Once inside, Clark closed the door and turned to her, his expression unreadable. "Emily, I've noticed you've been distracted lately," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Is there something you need to tell me?" Emily's mind raced. She had to think quickly. "No, nothing at all. I've just been overwhelmed with everything going on." Clark stepped closer, his gaze piercing. "You know how important trust is to me. If I find out you've been hiding something, there will be consequences." Emily forced herself to meet his gaze. "I understand, Thomas. I'm here to support you, just as you asked." Clark studied her for a moment longer before nodding. "Good. Remember, Emily, trust is everything." As she left the restaurant, Emily's hands were shaking. She knew she had come dangerously close to being exposed. The tension was unbearable, but she had to stay strong. The end game was near, and she couldn't afford to falter now. That night, as she lay in bed, Emily felt a mix of fear and determination. She had the evidence she needed, but getting it to Miles without Clark finding out was a risk. She had to be smart, cautious, and above all, resilient. The next morning, she sent the recordings to Miles, hoping it would be enough to bring Clark down. As she waited for his response, her anxiety grew. The stakes were higher than ever, and the danger was real. Then, a message from Miles. "We've got what we need. Stay safe. We're moving in." Emily's heart raced. The final confrontation was approaching, and she had to be ready for whatever came next. Emily could barely contain her nerves as she read Miles's message. She knew that things were about to escalate, and the tension was almost unbearable. She spent the day in a state of heightened alertness, waiting for any sign that Clark might suspect something. Every knock on the door, every phone call made her jump. That evening, she attended yet another high-profile event with Clark. The venue was a luxurious penthouse overlooking Central Park, filled with the city's elite. Emily tried to appear relaxed, engaging in polite conversation and maintaining her role, but her mind was elsewhere, focused on the impending move by Detective Miles. As the night wore on, Clark introduced her to several key figures, all of whom seemed to be involved in his intricate web of dealings. Emily did her best to gather as much information as possible without arousing suspicion. She was becoming adept at playing her part, but the constant fear of being discovered was taking its toll. In a quiet moment, Emily excused herself and found a secluded spot to text Miles. "I'm at the Penthouse event. Clark is with his key associates. Any updates?" Miles responded quickly. "We're monitoring the situation. Keep gathering evidence. Be careful." Emily took a deep breath and returned to the party, her resolve strengthened. She needed to stay focused and see this through. As she mingled, she overheard snippets of conversations that hinted at Clark's upcoming plans. She discreetly recorded what she could, knowing every bit of information was crucial. Later that night, as the event wound down, Clark approached Emily. "You've done well tonight," he said, a hint of approval in his voice. "These people are important to our future plans." "Thank you," Emily replied, hiding her true emotions. "I'm glad I could help." Clark's gaze lingered on her. "Remember, Emily, trust is everything. We can't afford any mistakes." "I understand," Emily said, her heart pounding. "I won't let you down." As she left the penthouse, Emily felt a mix of relief and dread. She'd managed to gather more evidence, but the danger was ever present. She knew she was walking a fine line, and any misstep could be catastrophic. The next few days were a blur of events and secretive meetings. Emily attended several high-profile gatherings with Clark, always on the lookout for anything that could serve as evidence. She discreetly recorded conversations, took photos of suspicious documents, and made mental notes of any significant interactions. At one such event, Emily noticed Clark speaking with a man who seemed particularly agitated. She managed to position herself nearby and catch snippets of their conversation. "The shipment's delayed," the man said angrily. "This could ruin everything." Clark's expression darkened. "I don't care how you do it. Just fix it. We can't afford any mistakes." Emily's heart raced. This could be the evidence she needed. She discreetly recorded the conversation and made a mental note to share it with Miles. As the evening wore on, Emily's anxiety grew. She was playing a dangerous game, and the pressure was immense. She needed to maintain her composure and not arouse Clark's suspicion. The next morning, she met with Miles again, sharing the recordings and her observations. He listened carefully, nodding in approval. "This is good, Emily," he said. "We're getting closer. Keep doing what you're doing, but remember to stay safe." "I will," Emily promised. "I just want this to be over." "It will be," Miles assured her. "We'll bring Clark down. Just hang in there a little longer." As Emily left the precinct, she felt a mix of fear and hope. The end game was approaching, and she had to stay strong. She was closer than ever to exposing Clark's true nature, and she couldn't afford to falter now. Clark, meanwhile, continued to press forward with his plans, unaware of the net closing around him. Emily knew that the next few days would be critical. She had to stay vigilant and ensure that every piece of evidence was meticulously gathered and handed over to Miles. In the evenings, Emily reviewed her recordings and notes, meticulously organizing them to present to Miles. She knew that every detail could be crucial in building a case against Clark. Her mind was constantly racing, but she found solace in the fact that she was getting closer to the truth. As she prepared for yet another event with Clark, Emily couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. The stakes were higher than ever, and the danger was very real. She had to stay focused and remember why she was doing this, to bring justice and end Clark's reign of deceit. Emily's performance at the events was impeccable, but she could sense a growing tension from Clark. His eyes seemed to linger on her longer, his questions more probing. It was clear he was beginning to suspect that something was amiss. One evening, after a particularly successful gathering, Clark invited Emily to his office for a private conversation. She felt a knot form in her stomach as she followed him, knowing that this could be a critical moment. "Emily, you've been doing a fantastic job," Clark began, his tone seemingly warm, but with an edge of cold calculation. "But I can't shake the feeling that you're distracted." "Is everything all right?" Emily forced a smile. "I'm fine, Thomas. Just trying to keep up with everything. It's been a lot to handle, but I'm grateful for the opportunity." Clark leaned back in his chair, studying her closely. "You know, Emily, trust is the foundation of any successful partnership. If there's anything you need to tell me, now is the time." Her heart pounded in her chest. She had to tread carefully. "I understand, Thomas. I assure you, I'm completely committed to our work." Clark's gaze didn't waver. "I hope so, because if I find out that you're not being truthful with me, there will be consequences." Emily nodded, keeping her expression neutral. "I understand. I won't let you down." The conversation left her shaken, but she couldn't let it deter her. She had to stay focused and gather the evidence needed to bring Clark down. That night, she contacted Miles, relaying the conversation and her growing concerns. "He's starting to suspect something," Emily told Miles. "We need to move quickly." "We're close, Emily," Miles reassured her. "Just a little longer. Keep gathering evidence, but be extra careful." Emily knew the risks were escalating, but she had to stay the course. The next few days were a delicate dance of maintaining her cover while discreetly collecting information. She attended more events, always vigilant, always on edge. At one particular gala, Clark introduced her to a man named Vincent, whose demeanor was more intense than the others. Emily noticed the way Clark and Vincent exchanged looks, the unspoken understanding between them. She sensed that Vincent was more deeply involved in Clark's operations. During the evening, she managed to catch a private conversation between Clark and Vincent. Their discussion was tense, filled with coded language and veiled threats. "The shipment must go through without a hitch," Clark said. "We can't afford any delays." Vincent nodded. "Everything's in place. We'll proceed as planned." Emily recorded the conversation, knowing it could be crucial evidence. She couldn't shake the feeling that the noose was tightening around her. Clark's suspicion, Vincent's presence, and the imminent shipment all pointed to a climax she wasn't sure she was ready for. The next morning, Emily met with Detective Miles at a small diner away from prying eyes. She handed over the latest recordings, her hands trembling slightly from the tension and exhaustion. Miles listened intently, his expression growing more serious with each passing minute. "This is exactly what we needed, Emily. You're doing great." "Thank you," Emily replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "But Clark's getting suspicious. I don't know how much longer I can keep this up." Miles leaned forward, his gaze intense. "We're almost there. We've got enough to start making moves, but we need to be strategic. Clark is dangerous, and if he feels cornered, he might do something drastic." Emily nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "What's the next step?" "I'll bring this evidence to my superiors," Miles said. "We'll prepare for a raid, but we need to ensure we have everything in place. Meanwhile, keep your distance from Clark as much as possible. Don't let him catch on." "I'll try," Emily replied, feeling the weight of the task ahead. "Just promise me this will end soon." "It will," Miles assured her. "We'll take him down. Just a little longer, Emily. You've been incredibly brave." As Emily left the diner, she felt a mix of fear and hope. The endgame was approaching, and she had to stay strong. She was closer than ever to exposing Clark's true nature, and she couldn't afford to falter now. The following days were a blur of careful maneuvering. Emily attended more events, but she kept her interactions with Clark to a minimum. She continued to gather evidence, but every moment felt like walking on a tightrope. Clark's behavior became more erratic, his suspicion more pronounced. He questioned her about her activities, scrutinized her every move. Emily knew she had to stay calm and collected, but the pressure was immense. One evening, as she was preparing for yet another event, she received a message from Miles. "We're ready. The raid is planned for tomorrow night. Be prepared." Emily's heart raced. The final confrontation was imminent. She had to ensure she didn't arouse Clark's suspicion during the event. It was a delicate balance, but she was determined to see it through. That night, at the event, Emily played her role to perfection. She smiled, engaged in conversations, and kept her composure, all while knowing that the next night could bring the end of Clark's reign. As she left the event, Clark's words echoed in her mind. Trust is everything. She had to hope that her trust in Miles and the plan would pay off. The stakes were higher than ever, and the danger was real. The next day was a tense waiting game. Emily went through her routine, trying to stay calm. As evening approached, she received a final message from Miles. "It's time. Stay safe." Emily took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. The endgame was here, and she had to be ready for whatever came next. The evening of the planned raid, Emily felt an almost palpable tension in the air. Every movement seemed amplified, every sound sharper. She dressed in a simple yet elegant black dress, ready to play her part one last time. As she prepared, she received a message from Miles. "Stay alert. We move tonight." Emily arrived at Clark's mansion, her mind racing with the details of the heist plan she had overheard. Clark's associates were already gathered, their expressions a mix of determination and anxiety. She spotted Vincent, who appeared particularly tense, and noted his frequent surreptitious glances at Clark. The room buzzed with low conversations and hushed whispers. Emily moved through the crowd, her senses on high alert. She had to gather any last pieces of evidence and stay out of trouble until the raid began. Clark approached her, his demeanor unusually somber. "Emily, come with me. I need to discuss something important." Her heart skipped a beat, but she maintained her composure. "Of course, Thomas." He led her to his private office, closing the door behind them. The room was filled with an air of anticipation. Clark motioned for her to sit, his eyes never leaving hers. "Emily, tonight is crucial," Clark began, his tone low and serious. "We have a significant shipment arriving, and I need everyone on their best behavior. No mistakes." "I understand," Emily replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Clark studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Good, I'm counting on you." As they left the office, Emily's mind raced. She had to stay close to Clark and gather any additional evidence, but without drawing attention to herself. The tension in the mansion was almost tangible, and she could sense the underlying fear among Clark's associates. The evening progressed with a series of strategic conversations and guarded exchanges. Emily managed to record several key interactions, each adding another layer to the mounting evidence against Clark. Just as the night seemed to stretch endlessly, Clark gathered his associates in the main hall. "The shipment will be here soon," he announced. "Everyone knows their roles. Let's make this a success." Emily's pulse quickened. The moment of truth was approaching. She positioned herself near a side exit, ready to signal Miles and his team when the shipment arrived. Every second felt like an eternity as she waited for the right moment. The atmosphere in the mansion was charged with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Emily stayed vigilant, observing every detail, every movement. Clark's associates were tense, their conversations hushed and urgent. Suddenly, the front doors opened, and a group of men entered, carrying large crates. Emily recognized them as the shipment Clark had been anxiously awaiting. The room buzzed with a heightened sense of urgency as the crates were placed in the center of the hall. Clark stepped forward, his expression stern. "Let's get this done quickly. No room for errors." Emily seized the moment. She discreetly activated the recording app on her phone and began capturing the unfolding scene. The crates were opened, revealing valuable art pieces and other contraband. Clark's associates moved swiftly, cataloging and organizing the items with practiced efficiency. As the operation continued, Emily caught Clark's eye. He gave her a brief, reassuring nod, oblivious to her true intentions. She returned the gesture, her mind focused on the plan. She needed to signal Miles soon. She edged towards the side exit, careful not to draw attention. Once outside, she took a deep breath and sent a quick message to Miles. Shipment arrived. Moving in. Within minutes, she heard the sound of approaching sirens. Her heart raced as she re-entered the mansion, positioning herself in a corner with a clear view of the room. The tension reached a peak as the sirens grew louder, signaling the imminent arrival of the authorities. Clark's expression shifted from determination to confusion as the noise outside became unmistakable. "What's going on?" he demanded, turning to Vincent. Vincent's face went pale. "It's the police. We've been compromised." Panic spread through the room. Clark's associates scrambled, trying to secure the contraband and cover their tracks. Clark's eyes darted around, searching for answers. Emily stayed hidden, watching the chaos unfold. The front doors burst open, and Miles led a team of officers into the mansion. "Everyone stay where you are!" he shouted. "This is a raid!" Clark's face twisted in rage and betrayal. He turned to Emily, his eyes blazing with anger. "You!" he hissed, realization dawning. "You did this." Emily stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fear inside. "It's over, Thomas. You can't hide anymore." Clark lunged towards her, but Miles and his team intercepted him, forcing him to the ground. "You're under arrest," Miles said, his voice firm. "For conspiracy, smuggling, and numerous other charges." As Clark was handcuffed and led away, Emily felt a wave of relief wash over her. It was finally over. The danger, the deception, the constant fear, it was all coming to an end. She watched as the officers secured the contraband and took statements from Clark's associates. Miles approached her, his expression one of admiration and concern. "You did great, Emily. It's over." Emily nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Thank you, Detective. I couldn't have done it without you." As the chaos subsided and the mansion emptied, Emily felt a sense of closure. The ordeal had been harrowing, but she had come out the other side stronger. She had faced her fears, uncovered the truth, and helped bring a dangerous man to justice. The aftermath of the raid left Emily emotionally exhausted. The adrenaline that had kept her going was now gone, replaced by a deep sense of fatigue. She returned to her apartment, collapsing onto her couch, her mind swirling with everything that had happened, the weight of the past weeks, the constant fear, and the relentless tension finally caught up with her. She tried to find solace in her art, but even that seemed tainted by the ordeal. Her canvases, once a source of joy and creativity, now reminded her of Clark's manipulations and deceit. She felt a pang of guilt and sadness, wondering if she would ever be able to paint with the same passion again. A knock at the door broke her thoughts. It was Sarah, her best friend and confidant. Sarah's face was a mixture of relief and concern as she entered, immediately pulling Emily into a tight hug. "I've been so worried about you," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "I saw the news. I can't believe everything you've been through." Emily nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "It's over now, but it's been so hard, Sarah. I didn't know if I'd make it through." Sarah guided Emily to the couch, sitting beside her. "You're so brave, Emily. What you did took incredible courage. But you don't have to carry this burden alone. I'm here for you." They sat in silence for a while, the comfort of Sarah's presence providing a much-needed balm to Emily's frayed nerves. Slowly, Emily began to open up, sharing the details of her ordeal, her fears, and the moments when she felt close to breaking. "It was terrifying," Emily admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Every day I thought Clark would find out and I don't know what he would have done." Sarah squeezed her hand. But he didn't, Emily. You outsmarted him, and now he's going to face justice because of you." Emily took a deep breath, feeling a small measure of relief. "I guess so. It's just... I'm so tired, Sarah. I don't know how to move forward from this." "You will," Sarah said with conviction. "It's going to take time, but you'll find your way back to your art, back to yourself. And I'll be right here with you every step of the way." As they continued to talk, Emily felt a glimmer of hope. The road to recovery would be long and difficult, but with Sarah's support, she knew she wouldn't have to face it alone. With the raid behind her, Emily spent the following days trying to regain a sense of normalcy. The media coverage of Clark's arrest was relentless, and Emily found herself avoiding the news, unwilling to relive the ordeal. Instead, she focused on the small, everyday tasks that helped ground her, cleaning her apartment, cooking simple meals, and gradually returning to her art. Sarah remained a constant presence, visiting often and providing a listening ear and comforting presence. Together, they talked through Emily's fears and uncertainties, and slowly, Emily began to feel a sense of normalcy returning. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, Sarah broached a topic that had been on both their minds. "So, what's next for you, Emily? Now that Clark is out of the picture, what do you want to do?" Emily sighed, staring at her hands. "I don't know. I feel like my whole world has been turned upside down. Part of me wants to get back to my art, but another part of me is just scared." "It's understandable," Sarah said gently. "You've been through a lot. But remember, your art is a part of who you are. It's your voice, your way of making sense of the world. Don't let Clark take that from you." Emily nodded, her resolve slowly strengthening. "You're right. I can't let him win. I need to get back to painting, even if it's just a little at a time." That night, Emily set up her easel and pulled out a blank canvas. She stood in front of it for a long time, brushes and paints laid out before her, ready to be used. The familiar scents of oil paint and turpentine filled the air, bringing a sense of comfort. With a deep breath, Emily dipped her brush into the paint and made the first stroke. The act felt both foreign and familiar, a tentative step back into the world she loved. She worked slowly, allowing herself to feel each movement, each color blending into the next. It was cathartic, a way to process her emotions and reclaim her sense of self. Hours passed as Emily lost herself in the rhythm of painting. She poured her heart into the canvas, transforming her pain and fear into something beautiful. By the time she stepped back, the first light of dawn was breaking through her window. She looked at the painting, a mixture of swirling colors and shapes that seemed to capture the chaos and hope of her journey. Exhausted but satisfied, Emily cleaned her brushes and turned off the lights. She crawled into bed, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in weeks. The nightmares that had plagued her sleep seemed to fade, replaced by the soothing knowledge that she was taking control of her life once more. As she drifted off to sleep, Emily knew the road ahead would still have its challenges, but she also knew she had the strength and support to face whatever came next. The night before had been a turning point, a step towards healing and reclaiming her passion. The next evening, as the sun set over the city, Emily found herself back at Clark's mansion. The familiar opulence and the weight of her role pressed down on her. This was it. The night when everything would come to a head. She had to stay calm and focused, knowing that Miles and his team were ready to move. Inside, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. Clark's associates were gathered, their expressions tense and serious. Vincent stood by Clark's side, his eyes scanning the room. Emily could feel the weight of their scrutiny as she moved through the crowd, pretending to be at ease. Clark called everyone to attention. "The shipment will be here shortly. We need to be ready. No mistakes." Emily positioned herself near the side exit, where she could slip out to signal Miles and his team. She took deep breaths, trying to steady her nerves. The minutes ticked by slowly, each second feeling like an eternity. Finally, the doors opened, and a group of men entered, carrying large crates. The room buzzed with activity as Clark's associates moved to inspect the shipment. Emily watched closely, her heart pounding. As the crates were opened, revealing valuable art pieces and contraband, Emily discreetly activated her recording app. She captured every detail, knowing this evidence was crucial. Clark and Vincent directed the operation, their movements efficient and practiced. Emily edged closer to the side exit, slipping outside just long enough to send a quick message to Miles. "Shipment here. Move in." She re-entered the mansion, her heart racing as she awaited the next phase. Within minutes, the sound of sirens filled the air, growing louder as they approached. The tension in the room spiked, and Clark's expression shifted from confidence to confusion. "What's happening?" Clark demanded, turning to Vincent. Vincent's face paled. "It's the police. We've been compromised." Panic erupted as Clark's associates scrambled to cover their tracks. Clark's eyes darted around, landing on Emily with a look of betrayal. "You!" he hissed. "You did this!" Emily stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fear inside. "It's over, Thomas. You can't hide anymore." Clark lunged at her, but Miles and his team burst through the doors, guns drawn. "Everyone stay where you are!" Miles shouted. "This is a raid!" Clark was quickly subdued, his rage turning to helplessness as he was handcuffed. "You're under arrest for conspiracy, smuggling, and numerous other charges," Miles declared. As Clark was led away, Emily felt a wave of relief. It was finally over. She had faced her fears, gathered the evidence, and now Clark would face justice. The officers secured the contraband and took statements from Clark's associates, ensuring everything was documented. Miles approached her, his expression one of admiration and concern. "You did great, Emily. It's over." Emily nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you, Detective. I couldn't have done it without you." As the chaos subsided and the mansion emptied, Emily felt a sense of closure. The ordeal had been harrowing, but she had come out the other side stronger. She had faced her fears, uncovered the truth, and helped bring a dangerous man to justice. The aftermath of the raid left Emily in a state of emotional exhaustion. The adrenaline rush had faded, replaced by a profound sense of relief. She returned to her apartment, where she found Sarah waiting for her. Sarah enveloped her in a tight hug, tears of relief streaming down her face. "You did it, Emily," Sarah whispered. "It's finally over." Emily nodded, feeling the weight of the past weeks lift slightly. "I couldn't have done it without you and Miles. It was a team effort." They sat together, talking late into the night. Emily recounted the raid in detail, the tension, and the moment Clark realized he had been betrayed. Sarah listened intently, offering words of comfort and encouragement. As the days passed, Emily tried to return to a semblance of normalcy. She spent time painting, slowly rediscovering her passion. Her art, once a source of joy, began to feel like a lifeline, a way to process everything she had been through. One afternoon, while Emily was working on a new piece, her phone buzzed with a message from Miles. "We need to talk. Urgent." Her heart skipped a beat. What now? She quickly arranged to meet Miles at a nearby cafe. When she arrived, Miles was already there, his expression serious. "What's wrong?" Emily asked, sitting down. Miles leaned in, lowering his voice. "We've uncovered more about Clark's operations. It's bigger than we thought. He has connections we didn't know about, and some of them are still at large." Emily's blood ran cold. "What does that mean for us?" "It means we're not done yet," Miles replied. "There are still key players out there, and they know about you. You're not safe, Emily. We need to take extra precautions." Emily felt a surge of fear. She had thought it was over, but the danger was far from gone. "What do we do?" "We'll increase surveillance and ensure you have protection," Miles assured her, "but you need to be vigilant. They might come after you to silence you." Emily nodded, her mind racing. The relief she had felt was now overshadowed by a new wave of fear. She had to stay strong, stay alert, and trust that Miles and his team would keep her safe. As she left the cafe, Emily's thoughts were a whirlwind. The ordeal was far from over, and the stakes were higher than ever. She had to stay focused, stay strong, and be ready for whatever came next. That night, as she lay in bed, the weight of the new threat pressed down on her. She knew she had to be careful, but she also knew she couldn't let fear control her. She had come too far to back down now. The next morning, Emily received another message from Miles. "We have a lead. Meet me at the precinct." Emily took a deep breath, steeling herself for the next chapter of this ongoing battle. She dressed quickly and headed out, determined to see this through to the end. The fight was far from over, but she was ready to face whatever came next. Emily's heart raced as she drove to the precinct, Miles' message echoing in her mind. The danger she thought was behind her was still very real, and she needed to be prepared for anything. As she entered the precinct, Miles greeted her with a somber expression. "We've identified some of Clark's key associates who are still at large," Miles explained. "One of them, Vincent, has been particularly elusive. We believe he's planning something drastic." Emily nodded, feeling a knot form in her stomach. "What do you need me to do?" "We need you to stay under protection for now," Miles said. "But we also need your help to lure Vincent out. We believe he sees you as a loose end and might try to contact you," Emily agreed. Understanding the gravity of the situation, she was taken to a safe house where she would be monitored and protected. The days passed slowly, filled with tension and uncertainty. Emily tried to focus on her art, but her thoughts were consumed by the ongoing danger. One evening, as she was sketching by the window, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "We need to meet. It's about Clark." Emily's heart skipped a beat. It was the contact they had been waiting for. She quickly forwarded the message to Miles, who responded with detailed instructions for the meeting. They would set up surveillance and ensure her safety, but Emily had to act natural and not reveal their presence. The next day, Emily arrived at the designated meeting spot, a quiet park on the outskirts of the city. She sat on a bench, trying to appear calm, but her nerves were frayed. She scanned the area, looking for any sign of Vincent. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Vincent, his expression cold and calculating. He approached her slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. "Emily," Vincent said, his voice low and menacing, "you've caused a lot of trouble for us." Emily held her ground, trying to remain calm. "I did what I had to do. Clark was a criminal, and he needed to be stopped." Vincent's eyes narrowed. "And now you need to be stopped." Before she could react, Vincent lunged at her, grabbing her arm and pulling her to her feet. Emily struggled, but his grip was strong. She could see the determination in his eyes. He wasn't going to let her go easily. Just as panic began to set in, Miles and his team burst onto the scene, guns drawn. "Let her go, Vincent!" Miles shouted. Vincent hesitated, his grip tightening on Emily. "Back off, or she dies." The tension was palpable as Miles and his team surrounded Vincent and Emily. The agents kept their weapons trained on Vincent, ready to act at a moment's notice. Emily felt Vincent's grip tighten, his desperation clear. "Vincent, there's no way out," Miles said, his voice firm but calm. "Let her go, and we can talk." Vincent's eyes darted around, looking for an escape. "I'm not going to prison," he hissed, "not because of her." "You don't have to go to prison," Miles replied, taking a cautious step forward. "We can work something out. But this isn't the way." Vincent seemed to consider Miles's words. But his grip on Emily didn't loosen. She could feel his breath on her neck, his agitation palpable. She knew she had to do something to diffuse the situation. "Vincent," she said softly, "it's over. Clark is gone. You don't have to do this." Vincent's expression wavered, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. "You don't understand. Clark's network is still out there. They'll come after me if I let you go." Emily took a deep breath, trying to project calm. "We can protect you, but you have to let me go." The standoff seemed to stretch on forever, the seconds ticking by painfully slow. Miles took another step forward, his hand outstretched. "Vincent, please, don't make this worse." Vincent's grip loosened slightly, but he still held onto Emily. She could feel the tension in his body, the fear and desperation driving his actions. She needed to keep talking, keep him distracted. "Think about your family, Vincent," she said, her voice gentle. "They don't want you to get hurt. Let me go, and we can figure this out together." Vincent's resolve seemed to crack. He glanced at Miles, then back at Emily. His grip loosened further, and for a moment, Emily thought he might actually let her go. But then, with a sudden burst of energy, Vincent yanked Emily back, trying to make a run for it. The agents moved quickly, surrounding him and forcing him to the ground. Vincent struggled, but he was quickly subdued and handcuffed. Miles rushed to Emily's side, his expression one of relief and concern. "Are you okay?" Emily nodded, her heart still racing. "I'm fine, thank you." As Vincent was led away, Emily felt a wave of relief wash over her. The immediate danger was over, but she knew there were still loose ends to tie up. Clark's network was vast, and there were others who needed to be brought to justice. Miles placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You did great, Emily. We'll take it from here." Emily nodded, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and resolve. The battle was far from over, but she knew she could face whatever came next with the support of Miles and his team. They had come too far to give up now. In the days following Vincent's arrest, Emily found herself grappling with the aftermath. She was under constant protection, but the knowledge that Clark's network was still out there weighed heavily on her. She knew she had to stay proactive, both for her safety and to help dismantle the remaining parts of Clark's operation. Emily spent hours going through her notes and recordings, trying to piece together any additional information that might be useful. She realized that there were still several key figures within Clark's network who needed to be brought to justice. Her resolve hardened as she formulated a plan to help bring them down. One evening, Emily met with Miles and his team at the precinct. The room was filled with charts, photographs, and documents, all part of the ongoing investigation. Emily stood before them, her confidence growing as she outlined her strategy. "I've identified several individuals who were closely associated with Clark," she began. "They were involved in various aspects of his operations, smuggling, money laundering, and more. We need to gather concrete evidence against them." Miles nodded, his respect for Emily evident. "What do you propose?" Emily took a deep breath. "I'll continue to act as if I'm still part of Clark's world. I'll attend events, meet with these individuals, and gather information. We can set up surveillance and ensure that everything is recorded. This way, we can build a solid case against each of them." One of the agents, a seasoned officer named Harris, raised a concern. "It's risky, Emily. They might suspect you now that Clark and Vincent are out of the picture." "I know," Emily replied, her voice steady, "but I've been in their world long enough to understand how they operate. If we're careful, we can do this." Miles looked at Emily, admiration and worry etched on his face. "You're incredibly brave, Emily, but you're not alone in this. We'll be right there with you, monitoring every step." With the plan in place, Emily prepared herself for the next phase of the operation. She attended events and meetings, always under the watchful eyes of Miles and his team. Each interaction was a delicate balance of maintaining her cover while gathering crucial evidence. During one particularly tense encounter, Emily met with a man named Dominic, one of Clark's key associates. Dominic was cautious, his eyes constantly scanning the room as they spoke. "You're a brave woman, Emily," Dominic said, his tone both admiring and suspicious. "Not many would stick around after everything that's happened," Emily forced a smile. "I'm just trying to move forward. Clark's gone, but his vision for the business still matters." "I want to see it through," Dominic nodded, seemingly convinced. "We could use someone like you. There's still work to be done, and we can't afford any weak links." Emily's heart raced as she recorded the conversation. Each piece of information she gathered brought them closer to dismantling Clark's network. She knew the risks were high, but her determination never wavered. As the weeks went by, Emily and Miles' team collected a substantial amount of evidence. The pieces were falling into place, and they were ready to make their final move. The plan was to confront Dominic and his associates at a major event they were organizing, a private auction of valuable and likely illicit art pieces. The night of the auction, Emily dressed carefully, knowing this could be the most dangerous operation yet. She wore a sleek black dress and minimal jewelry, her hair pulled back in a sophisticated style. She checked her recording devices one last time, then headed to the venue, a lavish mansion on the outskirts of the city. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. High-profile guests mingled, sipping champagne and discussing the art pieces on display. Dominic and his associates were scattered throughout the room, their eyes constantly scanning for any sign of trouble. Emily moved through the crowd, her senses on high alert. She spotted Dominic near a display of sculptures and made her way towards him. As she approached, he turned, his expression a mix of curiosity and suspicion. "Emily," Dominic greeted her, his tone cautious. "Glad you could make it." "Wouldn't miss it," she replied, forcing a smile. "Looks like a successful event." Dominic nodded, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Let's hope it stays that way." As the auction began, Emily positioned herself near the front, making sure she had a clear view of Dominic and his associates. The auctioneer started the bidding, and the tension in the room grew palpable. Halfway through the auction, Emily received a subtle signal from Miles, who was monitoring the event from a discreet location. It was time. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. Emily moved closer to Dominic, engaging him in conversation. "These pieces are incredible. Where did you find them?" Dominic smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "We have our sources." Before she could respond, the doors to the auction room burst open and Miles and his team stormed in, guns drawn. "This is a raid. Everyone stay where you are." Panic erupted as guests and associates tried to flee. Dominic's face twisted in anger as he realized what was happening. "You!" he spat at Emily. "You set us up!" Emily stood her ground, her heart pounding. "It's over, Dominic. You can't run anymore." Dominic lunged at her, but Miles and his team were quicker. They subdued him and his associates, securing the room and ensuring everyone's safety. The auctioneer and several high-profile guests were also taken into custody, their involvement in the illegal activities now exposed. As the chaos subsided, Miles approached Emily, a look of relief and pride on his face. "You did it, Emily. It's finally over." Emily nodded, exhaustion and relief washing over her. "We did it, Miles. Together." The authorities began cataloguing the evidence, taking statements, and processing the arrested individuals. The operation had been a success, thanks to Emily's bravery and determination. As the night drew to a close, Emily felt a sense of closure. The danger was finally over, and justice had been served. She had faced her fears, stood up to powerful criminals, and helped bring them to justice. Miles walked her to her car, his expression softening. "You've been incredible through all of this, Emily. I can't thank you enough." Emily smiled, feeling a sense of peace for the first time in months. Thank you, Miles, for everything. As she drove home, Emily knew that this chapter of her life was finally coming to an end. She had faced unimaginable challenges and come out stronger on the other side. Now, it was time to look forward to a future filled with hope and new possibilities. The aftermath of the raid on the auction left Emily emotionally drained, but filled with a sense of accomplishment. The authorities had successfully apprehended Dominic and several key associates, significantly dismantling Clark's network. Emily returned to her apartment, feeling a mix of relief and exhaustion. The following morning, Emily was woken by a knock at her door. She opened it to find Miles standing there, a warm smile on his face. "Morning, Emily. Can I come in?" "Of course," Emily replied, stepping aside to let him in. They sat down in the living room, the sun streaming through the windows, casting a soft glow. "I just wanted to check on you," Miles said, his tone gentle. "Last night was intense, and you've been through a lot." Emily nodded, appreciating his concern. "I'm okay, I think. Just relieved it's finally over." Miles leaned forward, his expression serious but kind. "You were amazing, Emily. Your courage and determination were instrumental in bringing down Clark's operation. We couldn't have done it without you." Emily felt a surge of gratitude. "Thank you, Miles. I couldn't have done it without your support and guidance." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Miles spoke again. "There's still a lot of work to be done. We're processing the evidence and following up on leads. But the major threat is neutralized. You can start to move on with your life." Emily smiled, a sense of peace washing over her. "I'm looking forward to that." As Miles left, Emily felt a renewed sense of purpose. She had faced her fears, and now it was time to reclaim her life and her art. She spent the next few days organizing her studio, cleaning her apartment, and planning her next series of paintings. The simple acts of normalcy brought a sense of healing. One afternoon, while she was painting, Sarah dropped by. "Hey, Emily, how you doing?" she asked, her voice full of warmth and concern. Emily turned to her friend, smiling. "I'm doing better. It's nice to get back to my art and start feeling normal again." Sarah hugged her tightly. "I'm so proud of you. You're incredible." They spent the afternoon catching up, talking about everything and nothing. Emily felt a deep sense of gratitude for Sarah's unwavering support. As they sat together, Emily realized how much she had missed these moments of simple joy and companionship. Later that evening, Emily received a call from the district attorney's office. "Miss Dawson, we wanted to inform you that Clark and his associates have been formally charged. Your testimony and the evidence you provided were crucial in building the case. Thank you for your bravery." Emily felt a sense of closure with the call. "Thank you for letting me know. I'm glad I could help." As she hung up, Emily realized that the chapter was truly closing. She had done her part, and justice was being served. It was time to focus on her future and embrace the opportunities ahead. The news of Clark's formal charges spread quickly. The media buzzed with reports, detailing the extensive network of illegal activities and the high-profile individuals involved. Emily watched the coverage with a mix of satisfaction and relief. The fight had been worth it, and justice was being served. One morning, as Emily was preparing breakfast, her phone buzzed with a message from Miles. "Press conference at noon. You should come." Curious, Emily agreed and made her way to the precinct later that day. The press conference was held in a large room filled with reporters and cameras. Emily took a seat near the back, wanting to stay out of the spotlight. The district attorney stepped up to the podium, flanked by Miles and other key members of the investigative team. "Good afternoon," the DA began. "Today we are pleased to announce that Thomas Clark and his associates have been formally charged with multiple counts of conspiracy, smuggling, money laundering, and other serious crimes. This investigation was extensive and complex, and we could not have succeeded without the bravery and cooperation of key individuals. As the DA continued to speak, Emily felt a swell of pride. She had played a crucial role in this, and the recognition, though indirect, meant a lot. After the conference, Miles found Emily in the crowd. "I'm glad you came," he said with a smile. "You deserve to hear that." "Thank you," Emily replied. "It's a relief to see this finally coming to an end." Miles nodded, his expression serious. "There's one more thing. We've secured a protective order for you just in case. Some of Clark's associates are still out there, and we want to make sure you're safe." Emily appreciated the precaution, though she hoped it wouldn't be necessary. "Thank you, Miles. I feel better knowing that." As the days passed, Emily's life slowly began to return to normal. She spent more time in her studio, finding solace in her art. Her paintings, once filled with the turmoil of her ordeal, began to reflect a new sense of hope and renewal. One evening, Emily received a call from a prestigious gallery in New York. They had heard about her involvement in the Clark case and were impressed by her resilience and talent. They offered her a solo exhibition, an opportunity she had dreamed of for years. Overwhelmed with joy, Emily accepted the offer. She spent the next few weeks preparing for the exhibition, pouring her heart and soul into her work. The gallery opening was a resounding success, with critics and art lovers praising her powerful and evocative pieces. At the opening, Emily was surrounded by friends, supporters, and admirers. Sarah beamed with pride, and even Miles attended, offering his congratulations. "You've come a long way, Emily," he said, his voice filled with admiration. "I'm proud of you." Emily smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. "Thank you, Miles, for everything." As the evening drew to a close, Emily stood in front of one of her favorite paintings, a piece that symbolized her journey from fear to empowerment. She had faced unimaginable challenges, but she had emerged stronger and more determined than ever. The impact of the case rippled through the art world and beyond. Clark's arrest and the dismantling of his network led to increased scrutiny of similar operations, ensuring that others would think twice before engaging in such activities. Emily's bravery and resilience had not only helped bring justice, but also inspired others to stand up against corruption and crime. As Emily walked home that night, she felt a profound sense of peace. The chapter of Clark's reign of terror was finally closed, and she was ready to embrace the future with hope and determination. She had reclaimed her life, her art, and her sense of purpose, and nothing could stand in her way. In the weeks following the gallery opening, Emily found herself adjusting to a new normal. The heightened sense of danger that had loomed over her life for so long was finally dissipating, replaced by a calm but vigilant awareness. The protective order from the authorities provided a sense of security, and Emily began to rebuild her life with a newfound sense of freedom. Emily's art continued to receive acclaim. The success of her solo exhibition led to more opportunities, including invitations to participate in prestigious art shows and collaborations with other renowned artists. Her story of courage and resilience had touched many, and her artwork reflected the deep emotions she had experienced throughout her journey. One afternoon, as Emily was working in her studio, she received a call from a prominent art magazine requesting an interview. They were interested in her story, not just as an artist, but as a survivor who had helped bring down a criminal empire. Emily agreed, recognizing the importance of sharing her experiences to inspire others. The interview was scheduled for the following week. Emily spent time reflecting on her journey, preparing to articulate the lessons she had learned and the strength she had found within herself. When the day of the interview arrived, she felt a mix of nervousness and excitement. The journalist, a thoughtful woman named Laura, arrived at Emily's studio with a small team. They set up their equipment and began with a tour of Emily's workspace, admiring the vibrant and expressive pieces that adorned the walls. "Your work is incredible, Emily," Laura said, genuinely impressed. "Each piece tells a story. Can you share a bit about the inspiration behind your latest collection?" Emily smiled, feeling at ease. "This collection is deeply personal. It represents my journey through fear, betrayal, and ultimately, empowerment. Each piece is a reflection of the emotions I experienced while dealing with Clark and his network." Laura nodded, taking notes. "Your story has inspired many. What message do you hope people take away from your art and your experiences?" Emily thought for a moment. "I want people to know that no matter how daunting the challenge, you can find strength within yourself to overcome it. It's important to stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult, and it's okay to ask for help. I wouldn't have made it through without the support of people like Sarah and Detective Miles." The interview continued, delving into the details of Emily's involvement in the investigation and the emotional toll it had taken. She spoke candidly about her fears, her determination, and the importance of resilience. By the end, Laura and her team were visibly moved. "Thank you for sharing your story, Emily," Laura said sincerely. "It's incredibly powerful, and I'm sure it will resonate with our readers." After the interview, Emily felt a sense of relief and closure. She had opened up about her journey, and it felt like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. She hoped that her story would inspire others to find their strength and courage in the face of adversity. With the interview behind her, Emily focused on moving forward and embracing the opportunities that lay ahead. Her art continued to flourish, and she found herself more inspired than ever. The recognition she received fueled her creativity, and she began working on a new series that explored themes of healing and renewal. Emily also took time to reconnect with friends and family. She visited her parents, who had been worried about her during the entire ordeal but had supported her unconditionally. The time spent with them was comforting and grounding, reminding her of the importance of loved ones. One evening, Emily and Sarah decided to celebrate the progress Emily had made. They went to a cozy restaurant in the city, enjoying a delicious meal and reminiscing about their friendship. "I'm so proud of you, Emily," Sarah said, raising her glass in a toast. "You've come so far, and you're stronger than ever." Emily clinked her glass against Sarah's, smiling warmly. "Thank you, Sarah. I couldn't have done it without you. Your support means everything to me." They spent the evening laughing and talking, the bond between them stronger than ever. Emily felt grateful for Sarah's unwavering friendship and knew she could face any challenge with her by her side. In the following weeks, Emily also reconnected with Detective Miles. They met for coffee, catching up on the latest developments in the case and discussing future plans. "You've done an incredible job, Emily," Miles said, sipping his coffee. "Your bravery and determination have made a huge impact." "Thank you, Miles," Emily replied. "I'm just glad it's over. I'm ready to move on and focus on my art." Miles nodded, a look of admiration in his eyes. "You have a bright future ahead of you, Emily. Keep pushing forward and never lose that fire." As Emily continued to work on her new series, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. Her art had always been a reflection of her inner world, and now it was a testament to her journey of healing and growth. She poured her heart into each piece, knowing that her story could inspire others. One day, as Emily was finishing a painting, she received an unexpected visitor. It was Detective Miles, with a bouquet of flowers in hand. "These are for you," he said, smiling. Emily took the flowers, touched by the gesture. "Thank you, Miles." "What's the occasion?" Miles shrugged, his smile widening. "Just wanted to show my appreciation. You've been through a lot, and you deserve all the good things coming your way." They spent the afternoon talking and laughing, a sense of camaraderie and mutual respect growing between them. Emily realized how much she valued Miles's friendship and support. He had been a constant source of strength throughout the ordeal, and she was grateful for his presence in her life. As the sun set, casting a warm glow over the studio, Emily felt a sense of contentment. She had faced unimaginable challenges and emerged stronger and more determined. The future was bright, and she was ready to embrace it with open arms. Emily's journey had taught her the power of resilience, the importance of support, and the strength of the human spirit. She knew that no matter what came next, she was ready to face it with courage and grace. The months that followed were transformative for Emily. Her new series of paintings, inspired by her journey through fear and empowerment, received critical acclaim. The pieces were celebrated for their emotional depth and powerful storytelling, resonating with audiences on a profound level. Emily's story of bravery and resilience became a beacon of hope for many. One day, Emily received a call from the district attorney's office, informing her that Clark and his associates were scheduled for trial. They asked if she would be willing to testify, as her first-hand account was crucial in securing a conviction. Emily agreed, knowing that this was a necessary step toward full closure. On the day of the trial, Emily walked into the courthouse, feeling a mix of anxiety and determination. Sarah was by her side, offering words of encouragement and support. "You've got this, Emily. Just tell the truth." Inside the courtroom, Emily saw Clark for the first time since his arrest. He looked gaunt and defeated, a stark contrast to the powerful, confident man she had once known. As she took the stand, she felt a surge of confidence. This was her chance to help ensure that justice was served. The prosecutor began with questions about her relationship with Clark, how she had come to work with him, and the events leading up to his arrest. Emily answered clearly and calmly, recounting the details of Clark's criminal activities and her role in gathering evidence against him. As she spoke, she noticed Clark's expression shift from anger to resignation. He knew the evidence was overwhelming, and there was no escape from the truth. Emily felt a sense of vindication, knowing that her efforts had helped bring him to justice. When the defense attorney cross-examined her, attempting to discredit her testimony, Emily remained composed. She answered each question with unwavering honesty, her resolve unshaken. By the end of her testimony, it was clear to everyone in the courtroom that she was a credible and courageous witness. After the trial, Emily stepped outside, feeling a weight lift off her shoulders. The trial had been emotionally taxing, but it had also been a necessary step toward healing. She had faced her fears head-on and emerged stronger for it. The verdict came a few days later. Clark and his associates were found guilty on multiple counts, including conspiracy, smuggling, and money laundering. The sentences were severe, ensuring they would not harm anyone else for a long time. The news brought a sense of closure and justice to Emily and everyone involved in the case. That evening, Emily and Sarah celebrated the verdict with a small gathering at Emily's apartment. Friends and family came together to support and congratulate her. Miles also attended, his presence a reminder of the teamwork and dedication that had led to this moment. As they toasted to justice and new beginnings, Emily felt a profound sense of gratitude. She had faced incredible challenges and emerged victorious, thanks to her inner strength and the unwavering support of those around her. The trial's conclusion marked the end of a tumultuous chapter in Emily's life. With Clark and his associates behind bars, she finally felt a sense of peace. Her journey had been arduous, filled with fear, uncertainty, and danger, but it had also been a testament to her resilience and courage. As the months passed, Emily continued to focus on her art. Her new series, now complete, was scheduled for exhibitions across the country. The themes of healing and renewal resonated deeply with audiences, and her work was celebrated not just for its aesthetic beauty, but for its powerful narrative. One morning, as she was preparing for an upcoming exhibition, Emily received a letter from the art magazine that had interviewed her. They were planning a follow-up feature on her, highlighting her latest works and the impact of her story. Emily agreed, recognizing the importance of sharing her journey to inspire others. The feature was a success, drawing attention to her exhibitions and further cementing her reputation as a talented and courageous artist. Emily received countless messages from people who had been touched by her story, expressing their admiration and gratitude. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that her experiences were making a difference. Emily also continued to strengthen her relationships with those who had supported her. She spent time with Sarah, enjoying their friendship and the sense of normalcy it brought. They often reflected on the journey they had shared, grateful for the bond that had grown even stronger through adversity. Miles remained a close friend and confidant, and their relationship evolved into something more profound. They often met for coffee, discussing their lives, hopes, and dreams. One evening, as they walked through the city, Miles turned to Emily with a thoughtful expression. "You've been through so much, Emily. I'm constantly amazed by your strength and resilience." Emily smiled, feeling a warmth in her heart. "I couldn't have done it without you and everyone who supported me. I'm grateful for everything." Miles took her hand, a gesture of comfort and connection. "You're an incredible person, Emily. Whatever comes next, I know you'll face it with the same courage and determination." As they walked, Emily felt a sense of contentment. She had faced her fears, brought justice to those who had wronged her, and emerged stronger and more determined. The future was bright, filled with endless possibilities, and she was ready to embrace it with open arms. Emily's journey had taught her invaluable lessons about resilience, courage, and the power of support. She knew that life would continue to present challenges, but she also knew that she had the strength to overcome them. Her art, her friendships, and her inner strength would guide her through whatever lay ahead. As she stood in her studio, looking at the vibrant and evocative pieces that adorned the walls, Emily felt a profound sense of gratitude. Her journey had been difficult, but it had also been transformative. She had discovered her inner strength, built lasting relationships, and created art that told her story in powerful and moving ways. With a deep breath, Emily picked up her brush and began to paint, each stroke a testament to her journey and a celebration of the person she had become. She was ready for whatever the future held, confident in her ability to face it with courage, grace, and an unbreakable spirit. If you enjoyed, please consider subscribing to our channel and supporting us through the thanks button.